Hi plucky friends. I am going to show you how to weave in loose ends tails of yarn as you are knitting a multicolored project. You can see that I've changed colors here several different times. I've got a nice swatch going because I have tried to tape this several different times and upload it to YouTube and it isn't working properly. So I'm going to divide this into English style and then do a separate video for continental style. So we're going to start with English style because I think that's how many of you who asked me to do this knit. So I am going to weave in this tail of the dark blue yarn that I cut, and I have my working yarn, the Icy Audrey, is on there. And so I am going to do this English style, so just be patient with me, and also be patient with my videography ability, which is lacking, and I'm just doing this on my iPad, so I'm sorry this isn't very professional, but hopefully it's good enough for you to get the idea of what I'm doing. So I'm going to turn my knitting around. You always do the weave on a right side row because the weave is going to show up on the back, which is your wrong side row. So I'm going to get my working yarn here into my right hand, and the tail, which I left a little longer than I normally would. That's probably a good 10 inches on this tail, as you can see. Normally I'd probably only use half that amount, but I'm using the extra amount, and you might want to use a little longer amount when you first get started, just so you have a little bit more to hold on to as you're getting used to the rhythm and working with two hands. Normally I only would knit this weave for about 10, 12, 15 stitches. I usually knit it for as long as I can keep a hold of the yarn, and then once I get to a place where the yarn is sliding on my hands, that's the end. But you want to leave a nice size tail so that you do have enough to hold on to. So I'm just going to go into my first stitch like I normally would, and I'm using the Icy Audrey, just coming up, throwing my yarn English style, knitting that stitch like I normally would. Now in the second stitch of the row, I am going to introduce the tail, and to do that I just bring the tail from left to right up under the right hand needle and lay it in between the right and the left hand needle. Now I'm going to use my working yarn and place it like I normally would in the needles, and now I'm unwrapping the tail. So basically, and then knit the stitch. So basically what you're doing is just wrapping that tail around your working yarn and securing it in there. So the next stitch you just knit normally because you only weave on every other stitch. That also helps secure and hold the tail in place. So now this is a weave stitch, so I'm going to take the tail, bring it from left to right up between the two needles, laying it over the right hand needle. I'm going to bring my working yarn and up over like I normally would for a knit stitch, and then unwrap the tail. And now this is just a regular stitch I'm going to knit, and now this is a weave stitch. So what you're doing is wrap the tail, knit, unwrap, and then finish off the stitch. The next one is a regular stitch. I hope you can see this okay. And now this is a tail stitch. So wrap, knit, unwrap. This is a regular stitch. You're just going to knit that like I normally would. And then this next stitch, you're going in between, taking the tail from the left to the right, under and up over the right hand needle, just letting it lay there. Bring your working yarn up over like you normally would. Now unwrap the tail. I'm going to knit this stitch like I normally would, English, I'm sorry. And then this is your weave tail stitch. So wrap, knit, unwrap, finish the stitch. This is a regular one, and then our last stitch, again bringing your yarn from the left to the right under the right hand needle and up over, just letting it lay there. Do your stitch like you normally would, unwrap the tail. And so you can see, I'll pull this out, and I like to, once I've done the tail, I don't always stop if I'm in the middle of the row, but once I end that row, then I go back and I kind of just pull my yarn out so that it's at normal gauge, and then that allows the tail to kind of pull out a little bit, And then that way when you cut it, it's probably already positioned well. And then, so you can see, if I'm not making you dizzy and nauseous, you can see the blue is just woven in right along the Icy Audrey, the lighter aqua color. And see if you can see that a little better. But you can see, and then you can see all of these tails that I've woven in down here. I left them uncut so that you can see how they're just woven in there. And what I would normally do after I finish the row or the round, or you can stop, whatever is comfortable for you, then I just take those tails and I'm trying to get them in focus here for you, and I just cut those off. Cut them relatively close to where they ended up. You can leave just a little bit, and then you just cut it, and then they might weave out just a smidge as you go along. But if they do and they end up weaving out and there's, you know, a little bit more of the tail sticking in there, you just snip it off again, and there you've woven it into enough stitches that it's not going to pull out. Like I said, I usually go about 10, 15 stitches, however long my tail is, and just weave it in and then cut it. So that's it. We'll do it one more time. Let me knit back across real quickly. And again, as a reminder, you always do the weaving on, while you're knitting a right side row, so that your weave is hidden on a wrong side row. This works really great for Fair Isle when you are knitting in the round because you don't see it at all, and you are picking when you're using two colors and you have to secure your floats that are just hanging out there while you're using the opposite color. You can use the same technique, the wrap, knit, unwrap, and that'll secure floats for you in your Fair Isle. So you're actually learning a technique that will serve you well for not only just loose ends, but also in Fair Isle. All right, so let's introduce the blue again. And we're just going to let the green hang out there. We're going to pretend that's our main color and that that's not going to get cut, and that we're just adding new colors, say every other row, every couple of rows or so. All right, so I'm introducing this new color. I would go into my stitch like I normally would. And again, I'm doing this for you English style. I just make a loop, a small loop with my yarn. You can see the loop there. And I'm just going to loop that over the needle to start the new color. Just knit that through like I normally would. And then I'm going to find the tail. And so I've got my color started. I'm just going to leave the Icy Audrey just kind of hanging out there. But when you do that, you may already know this, but just to make sure, when you're carrying a color up the side, always make sure that the color, the non-working dormant color, is over top of your working yarn, so that the next stitch, that's securing that working yarn, so it takes it all the way up on that selvage edge for you, so that it's up where you need it when you're ready to go back to that. So I'm laying that Icy Audrey over top of the blue yarn, and I've got the blue yarn ready to go into to make my next stitch. So now I'm going to secure the tail in there, and I'm just going to, again, working from left to right, coming up under the right hand needle, bring that between the two, now bringing my working yarn up in between, and then unwrapping the tail. So you're just going to go through that like that. I'm not going to explain, I'm just going to kind of knit through now. So here is my tail stitch, my weave stitch. So wrap, knit, unwrap, regular knit stitch, next stitch, wrap, knit, unwrap, and here is a regular stitch, weave stitch, wrap, knit, unwrap, regular stitch, sorry my English style is a little rusty, wrap, knit, unwrap, and that's how you do it. Regular stitch, every other stitch, weave stitch, wrap, knit, unwrap, finish the stitch, knit, and then the last one, wrap, knit, unwrap, and there you go. Once again, you got the tail, it's right there, it's ready to cut, it's woven in, and you can't even hardly see it. It's just hanging out there right along side, and that's how you do it. I hope this helps, and I hope that I taught you something new for your fair isle knitting and weaving in your ends as you knit along.